This is Shaun Sport in podcast form.
Now, there was so much happening in sport over the weekend, or not over the weekend, sorry, over the last 48 hours with AFL, and then there's Tottenham's reign came to an end after 3 wins in a row. But the number one thing that took centre stage yesterday was comments made by a radio presenter in relation to the Matildas and the She Believes Cup. Mm-hmm. That radio presenter was Marty Sheargold.
Yes.
And he had this to say.
You know what they remind me of? Year 10 girls. Now, I'm sorry to undermine the whole sport, but that's what I think of it, so you can stick it up the Asian Cup. I'd rather hammer a nail through the head of my watch that. Got any men's sport?
So Marty no longer has a job, Natalie.
No longer employed. And there's been a lot of people jumping into his defence saying, a lot of men jumping into his defence saying, what, so you can't even criticise them because they're not playing well at the moment? You absolutely can criticise a team for not playing well at the moment. That's not what he was doing. He was belittling an entire sport played by women because it's played by women.
Yeah, absolutely. It come across horrendously. He has since put it down to comedy purposes, and this is probably in your realm.
A joke that missed the mark. No, he knows what he was doing. And the other thing is, it's not a one-off with Marty. This is he's a repeat offender of this kind of stuff. He's
he is
born from another era.
Yeah.
And so you just go, I think society has progressed a little bit. You know what I mean?
A lot of people were putting up stuff yesterday and really wanted to speak out about issues like this, in particular when it comes to women's sport. One of those was Greg Hire, and he joins us now. G'day, Greg.
Good morning, crew. How are we?
Greg, when I saw your post yesterday, I thought, good on you for standing up for women's sport, firstly, and, decrying the sort of stuff that Marty had said. Talk everybody else who didn't see your post through what you said.
Yeah, I think, at first I was quite shocked and appalled at those comments that we just heard, and instantly I thought, especially the last comment about the nail in the regions, I thought, just do it then, mate. Like, you're absolutely good.
So we can arrange that. I'll buy the hammer.
Correct.
That takes some commitment, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what was more impact, I was sitting in the office alongside my colleague Michelle, and we speak about this. She's absolutely incredible. And I couldn't help but she just sort of, there was silence, and I just felt like there was just this disappointment from her in terms of there's so much progression in the world, as there should be. I mean, I think Hannah Ferguson from Cheek Media speaks about it really well. Like, the Matildas captivated not only Australia, I think the world, the female World Cup, the money that brought in, the participation rates, all that sort of stuff. And unfortunately, men do a horrible job. If you don't have an appeal for that sport or whatever, irrespective, we don't punch sideways, we punch down. Kate McCarthy spoke about it really well, and I think it's just in that moment, what I was most disappointed was there was a learning opportunity. His co-host may have actually gone, mate, what are you talking about?
Sure.
And pull your head in. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that would have been the most powerful thing in the world. Yet they potentially would have lost a mateship or a friendship. But if your mateship is destined on derogatory comments, then I question whether that's a true friendship. And I think, as you just adequately said, Nat, we've progressed. We're at this point now where, you don't need to just say these inflammatory comments. I mean, the amount of comments that I've actually, my wife said, you're wasting so much time engaging with, these people on social media. But I sort of sit there and, the vile nature that I've got, and it's fine. But unfortunately, that's the nature that females, and not just athletes, receive on a daily basis. And so, look, I'm a proud dad that I want to get my son to be able to not only respect and by words, but by actions. And so hopefully that's what I hope to progress with.
Greg, you just mentioned the co-host there. Obviously, a lot of things about leadership, right? But see something, say something. That would have been a great opportunity to jump in, and not everyone thinks about it afterwards, right? And a lot of us do in our own day-to-day think, geez, if I only said that. And you know what that would have done? That would have put an end to it and
100%.
Changed the course of the rest of the conversation.
Some balance about it. We don't always agree on our show about things, but everybody gets to if you say something that's wrong, Shaun, and when you say something's wrong,
When?
somebody
Name the date.
else will jump in and say, hang on a second, that's not right. You know, so that there's balance of opinion. But that was just a bunch of meathead blokes going, it was Beavis and Butthead. Do you know what I mean?
I couldn't agree more. And I think absolutely, like that, like, don't get me wrong, would have been challenging. Absolutely. Like, I don't know Marty at all. And would have they been intimidated? No doubt. But what a powerful statement would have that been? And more so on the other side, people in the car going, oh, wow, like, what a moment, you know? And for me, there's no denying that you're sitting there alongside him and going, yeah, that's a bit...
bit on the nose,
Yeah, that's the... And comedy, like, you know, a lot of people are like, it's comedy. I go, mate, it's on public radio in every respective. They're not paying for a ticket to hear that. Like, it's a sports report. Don't get me wrong, elite sports, and we speak about this, Shaun, like, elite sports, absolutely, like, you can be critiqued on
performance,
selection, whatever it may be. But that wasn't that. That had nothing to do with a 4-4-2 diamond formation. That was, I'm going to pull the PI55 of agenda to get a cheap laugh. And I think that's been happening for far too long.
And another comment that I saw in the last 24 hours too was somebody saying the other thing to think about in that statement was the punching down on Year 10 girls, because saying, they look like Year 10 girls. And it's like Year 10 is the age at which girls stop playing sport. Like, statistically, that's the age when most girls will drop out of sport because they're self-conscious or whatever. And when somebody's saying stuff like that, it just piles on that as well.
I'm not sure if he thought that as
another. I'm sure he doesn't, but it's just his attitude. But it's just an attitude. It's like, Year 10 girls, it's nothing. You wouldn't want to watch it. And that's just. I'm not saying that's the reason anybody would stop, but it's the pile-on. It's just an extra nail in that coffin.
Yeah, I think. Age, gender, whatever. I'll take Jesse Wagstaff and Damien Martin's daughters in my team. Like, they're absolutely ruthless. I've actually told my boys, like, you need to be more relentless and like that, and more passionate the way they demonstrate. You're at that time. There's people in a car, and often we're trying to empower young females and young men as well, no doubt. But obviously there's been systemic discrimination for decades. And that's the issue, I think. You can go, well, if this happened to men, what would be said? But it hasn't been happening for men for long periods of time. And I don't think, if I heard those comments talking about the under-20 Australian side that's competing at the Asian Cup, I would have said, mate, put the nail in again, like, you're an absolute buffoon. I don't think we need to be so derogatory and again attack that. But when we've been looking at for such a long period of time where one gender has been discriminated, anyone that says they haven't, you're kidding yourselves.
One of the great things that I like doing is going and watching my daughter play her sports, and in particular when they're playing football at the moment, because during the netball and other sports, which are traditional, hockey and netball used to be what the girls would play during winter.
Sure.
But now, with the advent of football taking over in a big way, you get to see them go absolutely mental on each other physically. And you're not used to that, right? So girls going in there and tackling them to the ground and, getting into maybe in a push and
like
shove.
When he said that women playing sevens rugby at the Olympics, it's amazing athletes.
But it's one thing I really enjoy in the fact they're having a crack at that and how hard they go. I will get back to that. Greg, I do reckon at times, absolutely more than at times, that when you're playing a sport like you or I, there is certainly an amount of people who would bag the shit out of me of my team back in the day.
But about your performance, not about the sport as a whole, saying that, that your sport is unwatchable, which is what Marty was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So, getting back to the difference between the thing, again, was the fact that we're talking about a sport versus an individual team, which we've all copped, and individual players, which we've all copped.
Yeah, I mean, exactly right, Shaun. I think there is nothing better than seeing any gender play sport. It is like the benefits of that, from a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of community. Why would you at any time try and create a barrier or a challenge for that. And unfortunately, like, what's that done is what we'll see. And the majority of people, like, there'll be 80% of people that, as we've seen, and we're talking about it right now, and hopefully a healthy debate. And I've had this discussion amongst that. And even to that point where we've got those, Shaun and I would have group chats with your stereotypical men that, have those. Mate, there is from that to 3 to 5 years ago, the memes or the banter is slowly dying down, and I think it's a good thing. It's not stopping completely, but it's little things like this where I've had a healthy conversation with a mate at a barbecue where I've been watching, and a son and a little boy is crying because he hurt himself, and the dad goes, "Don't be gay, get up." Yeah. And at that time, I go, "Mate, please never say that around me," and for those reasons. And because of the respect that we have, he goes, "No worries, I apologise." And I guarantee you it, even at the time I've had pushback. He goes, "Mate, like, don't be silly, it's nothing." 24 hours later, I've had a conversation with that same individual, and I go, "You know what, you're right, I apologise," and all that. And so I think, again, we go back to this radio incident. Maybe Marty in that moment would have gone, no doubt, the arrogance of him, he would have gone, "You're an absolute idiot for trying to hold me accountable." Yep. But in a moment, even in that period of time, I actually think he may have gone, "You know what?" And I think this is the thing, is he's lost his job, and people go, "Well, does he deserve it?" I go, well, was he remorseful? Like, has he actually understood the implications around this? Like, I'm sure he rates well. There has to be some guide behind this. Like, did he just go, "No, well, I'm done and I'll pull the pin"? And I'm sure he'll now do a rogue podcast, and he'll get the Stan Newman likes that, love him. But in saying that, though, I'm glad that there is progression in the world. We are now having healthy debates. Majority of it, don't get me wrong, there's some really critical points. The last 24 hours, the amount of people that have responded to my tweet, like nameless and some vile things, and I'm, again, happy enough to absorb it. But the majority of it, I go, there is actually some change happening and occurring. Hence why we're having this discussion today.
Yeah, and
we're evolving.
And I just want to say this again, because this goes back in conversations I'd have been back in before. You can be critical of women's sport when you're watching a performance and you don't like it, or you don't think someone's up to scratch or whatever, because that's what happens in our life and in our job.
An entire sport. Well,
that's the difference.
An entire sport, and then further to that, any women's sport. Yeah.
That's the difference.
So,
Absolutely. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you so much for throwing your 2 cents in, Greg. It's great to hear from you, and great to hear your opinions. Thank you.
No, my pleasure.
Is that twice in a week?
Well,
I don't. Please, no one else say any road comments. I don't know if I've got my quota for the month.
I mean, that's what happens when you become a Hall of Famer. Everybody wants a piece of you.
I've never been more serious in my life. It feels awkward.
Send us an invoice, Greg. You deserve it.
Keep fighting the good fight, Greg. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Greg.
Cheers. That's Greg Hire, of course, Wildcats legend.
Shaun Sport in podcast form.
Given Nathan's not here this morning, I'm going to kick off with cricket.
Okay.
I'll spare him when he comes back, so I'll get all the cricket out while he's not here.
Yeah.
And then he's safe when he comes back.
Well, I've heard that he's just going to stay away until cricket season's over.
That's a fair call too. So Matt Kuhneman, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the fact that the ICC have said, hey, we're going to have a look at your bowling action.
He got cited, didn't he?
Yeah, got to have a bit of a bendy arm thing happening when he was very successful on the Sri Lankan Test Tour. Yeah. Australia won 2-0. No surprises. He's got the all clear. He's back in action. He's a chance to be in Australia's lineup for the World Test Challenge against South Africa.
That's amazing, isn't it? But he wasn't allowed to play while he was being investigated. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
correct. He's suspended for pending investigation. It's like, would he have gone to the Champions Trophy otherwise?
No, he would have got slogged over the fence in that kind of format of the game. But he's pretty good in the long format of the game, which is Test cricket, of course. But he would have had the chance to go back and play Shield cricket.
Yes,
that would have been the big thing for him and keep his momentum going, which would have been a big deal as well. Hey, tonight, the Perth Wildcats are back in action. Now, this is really interesting. Every time they play Melbourne United, let's say over the last couple of years in particular, away they've actually had reasonable success.
I'll say
reasonable.
Yes. But they haven't beaten United this season, have they?
They haven't beaten United this season. Every time they've played at home against United here, the first game, by the way, is away.
It's in Melbourne,
They have got their asses spanked.
Yeah.
would
And
be
the other thing
the right term.
about Melbourne United is that Chris Golding just seems to turn it on when he plays Perth. And you know, he used to play for us back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an old stager now. He's been around forever. But he can drop those long bomb threes. And it's just like, stop letting him get the ball.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. That is your strategy. It's to stop Chris Golding from getting the ball.
Yeah. When they played,
I'm no expert.
No, when they played early on this season and Chris Golding just dropped like 50 points on them,
Yeah.
it was some of the worst defence I've ever seen. It was
yeah.
unbelievable. And when you watch Bryce play in the same era, when the teams really have got the clamps on him, they're throwing two people at him. He's got to pass it off, and then it's up to the other Wildcats to score. If the other Wildcats start scoring, then it opens up for Bryce to be able to get his shots later in the match.
Absolutely.
They didn't do that to Chris Golding at all.
No.
And the one thing that the Wildcats have been poor on at times is their one-on-one defence is horrendous at times, and that will be a real issue for them. If they're going to go one-on-one against Chris Golding, he can just throw down another 40 and the game's over.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's going to be shootout, though, for sure.
We'll see how that turns out. Yesterday, the Townsville Fire took care of our Perth Lynx 2-0 in their series. Absolutely smoked them away yesterday by 30 points.
I know. That was a brutal defeat.
It was a big time defeat. You know, the Townsville Fire have made the grand final 3 out of the last 4 years. How good are they going?
That's a dynasty.
Our team's no slouch as well. Like, we were in the finals last year. We should have won. I won't even go back to that. Remember that? I came in I was devastated.
Sounds like you're going back to it.
All right, I'll leave that alone then. And the other thing, finally, in football at the moment, there's a lot of things happening. Plenty of pre-season games going on, and it's so heartbreaking for so many people to do these massive pre-seasons, and everyone's flying. You know, everyone couldn't be fitter, stronger, faster, and then you get to a week out from the season and people start going down. So at the Dockers, the captain Alex Pearce hasn't played a pre-season game. He's done a hell of a lot of running and a hell of a lot of watching on sitting on a stationary bike on the sidelines now with an ankle injury.
Be, so awful.
Yeah.
Just sit there pedaling while they're all playing footy. That's not great.
I wonder.
So you don't think he'll start the season?
Well, they're saying 100% he will, but I'm just wondering if you're going into a season where you've been unable to play because of an ankle injury, and it has to be something that probably requires surgery, I would have thought. I mean, you know a lot about this stuff from a medical point of view. To hurt your ankle, the end of last year and have this issue go through.
Yeah.
But
surely if it needed surgery, they would have done it then.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have thought so too. But yeah, I just don't know about that one. And the other one is Hayden Young. He's re-injured his hamstring twice. Now, when you get to this point, scar tissue starts building up, and you've done it once, twice. You've got to be really careful in his comeback. They clearly weren't. On Saturday, he re-injured himself, and he's one of the most important players in the Fremantle Dockers lineup.
You don't want to rush that back if you are having like chronic hamstring issues, and you'd also want to really look at their lower back. Yeah,
no question about that. I'm sure they'll go across that kind of stuff. But I don't know. Have you ever done a hamstring?
No, I've done a calf though, and that I've got big calves too, and so when that went, it really went. I couldn't walk. I literally couldn't walk. I was kind of like I had to do this weird shuffling thing because I couldn't walk at all. And painful as well. Yeah,
it's really bizarre. It's like that you go running along and someone has got you with a BB gun in the back of the leg.
Yes.
And it really hurts. You don't even know where it's come from. I'll tell you this one. The first time I ever did a hamstring, because I'd never had an issue with that. I mean, I did my knees and did all that kind of stuff. Someone kicked me in the ball, can't remember. We were playing North Melbourne. It was at Subiaco Oval, and I'm just tearing off, right?
Yeah.
And then, the guy gets me with a sniper, and my hamstring's gone. And for some reason, you would see this all the time, it's like the player, you put up your hand for some reason, like you're hailing your cab.
Help me.
Yeah, straight away. But I had the ball underneath my armpit.
Yeah.
Wayne Carey was chasing me back in the day. He didn't, the play had probably pretty much stopped, but he grabbed hold of me and smashed me into the ground. Yeah, but he didn't do a thing.
The ball, Shaun. Handball it, for goodness sake.
Oh, what a bastard.
You're right. I mean, well, there would be a few who agree with you.
Yeah. Good luck to Hayden Young with his comeback from injury.
Yep, do all the rehab right. That's my...
Yep.
And don't rush it. Yeah, especially if you've done more than one.
Shaun Sport is a Nova podcast. For more great comedy shows like this, head to novapodcast.com.au.